You can't see the stones from the road. I park at the Doty building where Ted Pappas first opened his solo offices in his Uncle John's building in 1968. Then walk a block north on Washington Street. I pass one of the closed ramps to the Isaiah Hart Bridge, each of the ramps scheduled for demolition, and walk east on Monroe Street. This portion of downtown still retains ghost shadows of its original neighborhood feel. Perhaps 100 of the thousands of original tall houses with spacious porches, like the prototype Ted designed for Northwest Jacksonville JaxbyJax after listening to community concerns and dreams, still stand. Attorneys and bail bondsmen operate offices in the structures that aren't boarded up rooming houses. Lots of empty lots hold the absence of lovely homes demolished, a present absence. What should have been had Jacksonville, as every other North American city, not ruined so much of itself. In just such a block, I pass a gaggle of homeless men and women who park their shopping carts in a space central to their assemblage. Across the street, a broken-down 1970s van bears a Georgia license plate and flat tires. The jail's a block over, so's the Sulzbacher Homeless Center. The police headquarters is 2 blocks away. Clearly, homelessness, failure at basic survival, and citizenship is still linked directly to criminality, just as vagrancy laws not so long ago in this country illegalized people police perceive to be in the wrong place. I walk deep into the vacant lot. The lot runs deeper than you'd think from the street. From a broken chain-link gate at the back, I enter what I think of as the final resting place for the Milne Pappas building, its ruins, its boneyard, but also its ship of Theseus. Mary Lee Pappas says she doubts Ted thinks about how his architecture will be remembered in the future. I think it would be painful, she says. He's received so many design awards over the years that I can't even remember how many he's won, but so often we've seen his buildings come and then go. It's the same with Bob Broward and Bill Morgan. And these days, architects do more holistic city planning, but Jacksonville still hasn't gotten to that point. Even though he's talked about it and been asked his views about it for as long as I can remember, I think his biggest frustration has been the lack of vision. While Ted may not think of his career in terms of future heritage, more than one of his designs is slated for inclusion in the upgraded version of a tome called Jacksonville's Architectural Heritage. The first edition of that book, featuring descriptions and photographs of thousands of architecturally and historically significant structures, a project undertaken by activists like Wayne Wood and historians like Joel McEachin for the Jacksonville Historic Landmarks Commission, was first published in 1989. Though a back section called for the Future included Pappas's Singleton Center, one of the criteria for inclusion was that a building be at least 50 years old. When the second edition is published for Jacksonville's bicentennial in 2022, it will include several Pappas designs, most prominent among them St. John the Divine Greek Orthodox Church. Even after watching the destruction of his heart and headquarters, however, Ted didn't give up. On April 10th, 2002, the Times-Union's Sandy Strickland wrote, "About 4 weeks ago, Jacksonville's architect Ted Pappas moved out of a historic building on Riverside Avenue that was to be demolished to make way for the road's widening." She continued, "He made sure, however, that the building's striking facade, made of 150-pound stones, wouldn't become just a memory. He'd fought the demolition for a decade and succumbed to the vision of its fatality years ago. But a month prior to his headquarters' destruction, he removed its great stone blocks, planning to reinstate them elsewhere. He'd received an estimate that it would cost $1 million, which he could not afford, to move what certainly seemed now his most important building. So instead, he got a special permit to save what he could of the exterior. The Florida DOT called the procedure abnormal, said typically a contractor would dispose of a structure that stood in the way of eminent domain in the most expedient way possible, usually in an approved landfill. But spokesman said this building was different and special and significant. Strickland referred to the architect and his working at Epping Forest Yacht Club and the Beaches Library and First Guarantee Bank as having hoped to remove the framework and decorative pediment, which he couldn't do without structurally impacting the building, which, he noted, ironically, I'm not authorized to do. Where Ted moved the stones, what he planned to do, and how those plans fell through with the continued sinking of his broken heart, I, for the longest time, don't know. It's as big a mystery as what Taylor Hardwick did with the onion domes he salvaged from the destruction of the original St. John the Divine Greek Orthodox Church downtown. In the early 2000s, Preston Haskell was, depending on whom you speak with, the third or fourth most powerful person in Jacksonville. Though Jacksonville Transit Authority engineers originally drew up plans to expand Riverside Avenue toward the Riverside, Haskell convinced the city to alter its plans inland, what Ted still calls our side of the street. Haskell justified the change, and city officials ultimately agreed by saying the plan protected the old YMCA building and the historic Brooklyn Fire Station No. 5 from demolition. Since the widening of Riverside Avenue demolished the Milne Pappas building and other historic structures on the inland side, both the original YMCA building and the fire station have been demolished, and engineers have asked the JTA and the Florida Department of Transportation to consider spending money to narrow this section of Riverside Avenue yet again to make it more friendly for new urban neighborhood construction. When I asked Ted what he did with the stones following the demolition, he says, that was a quick emotional decision. To reuse those stones would require special planning and design in a special use building. That opportunity never happened. The stones, he tells me, are on an empty lot on Monroe Street near Washington. I've since sold the lot to Alex Safakis, local developer. It cost me $13,000 to move the stones in the year 2000. I couldn't see spending that much and more again. Perhaps Alex will find a good use, maybe a mausoleum. I find the stones at the back of a lot off Monroe. A broken gate leads to a lot behind a lot. Here lie the stones, 4 and 5 and 6 deep in 3 long rows, and in dismantled piles grown over by woodbine and greenbrier. Standing here is a strangely emotional experience. I could wait 1,000 years for the earth to usurp and welcome us over. What might I now say? I suppose I argue for the value of an architectural design, even against whether it's been built, been respected since built, or even still stands, because I'm a writer. I don't have to build anything. I don't have to build anything physical. I chronicle ideas as they happen in the world, and the best edifices of words I can erect. An architect may be, as Ted so often says, a creative interpreter, but Ted is also a man with his own ideas and vision. The designs themselves exist yet and will still and must. Consider the ship of Theseus and grandfather's axe. These are the names of 2 versions of the same thought experiment. If you replace one part of the ship, it's still the same ship, right? What if you keep replacing parts of the ship until, over time, you've replaced every single original piece? Does the original ship no longer exist, or is it still the same ship? With grandfather's axe, if you replace the handle, it's still the same axe, right? What if you later replace the head of the axe too? Is it the same axe as when you replaced the handle, but not the same axe you started with? Or is grandfather's axe always grandfather's axe? It stings the designer to witness these alterations because the building is the representation of his design in the world. No one, however, can remodel his original vision. In the beginning was the Word. That's the design behind Always, a rose is a rose is a rose. Then again, a thing in the world exists in the world. I doubt Alex Safakis will build a mausoleum of the 150-pound stones from the demolished Milne Pappas building, but I also doubt Ted meant the comment anyway, but sardonically. I imagine a space created entirely of words as the most ephemeral material, in which those stones would find a good use. Maybe even a space I could write, maybe even a space I'm writing right now and that you're reading. If so, I hope it could do some slightest semblance of justice. Thank you.